All right, guys, let's get started. Thank you for coming to, I think, the last or one of the last sessions of the day, so we appreciate your time. We'll go through what we're hoping to do is kind of identify and talk about two residency programs that are kind of self-identified of having some initial negative cultural aspects that led way to opportunity to kind of turn those things around. And so what we hope to do is go through that process for both the programs, give some tools and discussions, and offer some examples from not only residency leadership, but the residency leadership, or excuse me, residence perspective. We have 4 speakers today, myself included. Steve Miller, I'm one of the assistant program directors at Virginia Commonwealth University. We have Dr. Joel Moll, who is our program director at VCU, Dr. Melissa White, who's the program director at Emory, and one of our chief residents at VCU, Lauren Wingfield. No disclosures, and kind of briefly the objectives, as I kind of mentioned. We'll cover some examples and work through some tools. We have about 20 minutes, so we're definitely going to be scratching the surface only, so if there are any questions or anything along those lines, please feel free to contact us or ask at the end. I'll hand it over to Joel to give you some background.
Okay, so the transition to VCU didn't kill me, but something this week has tried to, so I apologize for my voice. So hopefully you can understand, but I do want to go over, just to kind of give you situational awareness of where we started. So top is 2014, bottom is 2018. This is before, did these slides before we got our ACGME surveys that just came in the mail. But as you can see from a resident standpoint, we were pretty much kind of going in the wrong direction. We were below the national average. We had some issues, and we've made some significant progress in those things. If you just look at the direction of where these lines are going, downward versus upward now, and right now we have the best ACGME surveys in the hospital amongst 20 residency programs at a major academic medical center. So we're very proud of that. But that didn't happen from any one person or any one individual way. It happened because we were very strategic and deliberate about what we did, and that's kind of what we want to get across to you, how we did some of those things. Again, faculty surveys, we were actually getting near a citation for some of the faculty survey, and that has turned around substantially again to be very positive surveys. In addition to that, half of the residents when I arrived were on a study plan, meaning less than the 25th percentile, and so we're like, this is something we have to address right away. On the in-training exam. And so as you'll see over the course of just literally a couple of years, we've gone down to now we've had 2 years in a row where none of our residents are below the 25th percentile. And that's been, again, a multi-purpose, multiple-driven, very deliberate reason. So we kind of use the same formula for a lot of these things. And I think it's important to think about that a little bit, because in emergency medicine, we're not always patient, we're not always deliberate, we just want to do it and get it done. But I wanted to tap into adult learning theory that we knew worked and that people wanted to learn. Also, as much as we may love or sometimes not love millennial traits, what are millennial traits for most of our residents could we also tap into, in addition to having a little bit of a change management process? Because again, you don't want to say, let's just do this. You want to do it in a format that people can be deliberate, because some things are a marathon, some things are a sprint. So academic learning principles, I'm not going to bore anybody with that, the adult learning theory, but hopefully as you go through, you'll think about what are they tapping into. Hopefully the people giving examples will tell you some of the things they're tapping into about characteristics of adult learning and also characteristics of millennials that we tried to specifically target, so we were successful the first time we went up to make some of the changes we wanted to make. And then borrowing from kind of knowledge translation, Pathman's pipeline, somebody has to be aware of something in order to accept it. They have to accept it in order to make that change. They have to change their behavior. They have to adapt on it, and then they have to adhere to it. So what I call the 4 A's is a very simplistic, but I think quite highly effective way to manage change for a group of people who typically aren't very good about managing change over time. With that, back to Steve.
So to discuss kind of from a leadership perspective some examples of putting these principles in place, I had the unique perspective of going through residency here at VCU, during the earlier part of the statistics that Joel had mentioned, it was a very kind of work-driven. We were working 12-hour shifts, not a lot of focus on the education components and the kind of extra things that we all really want to reinforce in residency. And then coming on board into residency leadership, getting to see that kind of cultural change and perspective on how can we kind of turn this around. And really our first principle and what we tried to do was create a very managerial style that was open door policy, very active listening, holding a lot of town hall meetings, being very transparent with the things going on, so that the residents knew that we might not have the budget to get this done, the C-suite might not be on board quite yet, but we're listening to you and we want to know that these are the things that we're going against and what we're trying to adapt to. One of those first things you can see in the corner there, we implemented did a healthy competition for a new kind of rebranding of a logo for the VCU Emergency Medicine. This is resident-driven. Residents submitted their logo designs and then voted on to accept kind of taking that ownership that they had to develop part of the residency and the program. The other, as you can see here, one of our pictures from our annual resident retreat. We took 24 hours of clinic-free time. All of the residents got an opportunity to participate in our retreat. We gave them options of where the location that they wanted to and what topic of education, kind of mixing that millennial trait of teamwork, team atmosphere, but also kind of work-play expectations. For the past 4 years, they've chosen to go to one of our state parks with the usual theme of wilderness medicine, so they get to go and camp out, have some good team building exercises, and then some didactic education outdoors away from the classroom. The other things that we implemented from the adult learning perspective, our conference was 5 hours of kind of death by PowerPoint. We implemented a very strategic routine to make sure that in those 5 hours, any lectures that were given were held to about a 25-minute standard, with more emphasis on flipped classroom or small group. We also dedicated at least 2 hours to SIM skills training, whether in the SIM lab or just in our conference room, and small groups, and getting that active participation, again, from that kind of higher level of learning that we're all focused on. We were able to budget for each of the 3 years of classes to allow them to participate in either a regional conference or a national conference. So this is a picture at our Virginia ASEP Jeopardy competition that our first years get to go to every year. The entire class gets time off to do it. Our second years come here to SAEM, and third years get to go to ASEP. Down at the bottom, you can kind of see a classic helipad graduation photo. The scrubs in that picture were resident designed, again, driven kind of to create an atmosphere of emergency medicine and VCU, to get their own scrubs, identify them within the department, and has been something that is very taken and supported during their time. The other thing we did is in regards to feedback, so through the town halls, through just kind of standardized feedback forms, one of the constant themes that we got was more teaching rounds, bedside teaching. As I know, I'm sure many at your own places have that same type of feedback. Some faculty are very good at this and implement it on a regular basis. Some faculty, it's like pulling teeth. And so one way that we were able to combine that and lead to kind of a strategy of getting it out there was having a 15-minute afternoon teaching session where any residents on shift could go out of the department to one of our small resident conference rooms, have a short session on topic of the day that's either resident run or faculty run. Nurses wouldn't bother them, and the faculty agreed that for that 15 minutes they could handle things in the department, which was and has been well received. So again, just a few examples of some of the things that we implemented from the strategies from a leadership perspective I'm going to hand it to Lauren, who's one of our chief residents, to give a resident perspective.
So like Dr. Miller said, oh, I'm shorter than him. Like Dr. Miller said, I am one of the chief residents, and so my residency experience has been all through Dr. Moll and Dr. Miller's tenure here. So one of the things I think that the residents really appreciate and that I really appreciate is the responsiveness to feedback and the town hall style when big decisions are made. Even if we don't get the answer that we want, there's a lot of transparency about the decisions and why things are the way that they are, and that if the residents bring up a real problem, like for instance, if a rotation gets persistent negative feedback, that rotation has been changed within the year. And I think the residents really value that. So here is a picture of me on my first shift. I probably should have looked more deer in the headlights, but just in my 3 years, so it wasn't that long ago, just in 2016, we've had a lot of major changes that show the responsiveness to feedback, including more time in the ER, more ICU time, and especially important is the adult learning style conference, so we're not sitting there, like Dr. Miller said, doing death by PowerPoint, and I think all of us really appreciate that. So finally, kind of getting to the millennial liking work and play and like kind of learning in a fun way. Hopefully these pictures show that we do have fun at work, but we also work really hard. We've done a lot of things like making conference fun, having the retreat, and then we also have something called Project Carlos, which is a wellness representative from each class that you can go to talk to that is separate from the leadership if you have any wellness issues. So I think a lot of the residents feel very supported by that. So overall, I think we're happy and appreciate all the hard work.
Great. So for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Melissa White, and I'm the program director at Emory. And I think my story is a little bit more like a program director horror story, for those of you that have been. I think also that Joel and I are very much the same in that we both stepped into very well-established programs. And when you step in as a new program director, you're going to expect a little bit of chaos and change within the program. And so when I stepped in, actually, the way that it kind of went down is Philip Shane, who is in the center, had been the program director for 17 years and beloved by our faculty and by our residents. And he called me up one day and he said, "Hey, I'm taking a new position. It's all yours. Goodbye, click." And I pretty much did that, and I was like, oh no. And then the chaos started, and that imposter syndrome kind of started as well. And but I knew that it was going to be a great change. The interesting piece that kind of happened about the same time is that there were several big changes going on within our program, and we also made the dreaded mistake of 2 weeks before this saying, you know, nothing has happened in our program. There's nothing going on. And so, of course, you know, as with anything, saying things have been quiet, things are getting ready to hit the fan. And so during this time, we were also looking at changing our trauma. We had the door that was open for us, and trauma was getting ready to change at our facility, especially at Grady. So there were some really big changes, which from a program director standpoint, it really felt like this was going to be, they could see the trees and I was looking at the forest behind. And so I made the mistake of maybe not including my residents in some of this conversation. And so what resulted is what I thought was going to be a positive in stepping in as the new program director ended up being some discussions on student doctor network that were pretty negative. And so it really kind of came as, it was really enlightening to me to see how something could be placed anonymously at a really difficult time where it could be posted anonymously during interview season, and it was really misinterpreted and misrepresented. And so we had several different ways to kind of overcoming this complex issue, because shortly after that, residents then identified themselves through emails that were blasted out to all of faculty with their discontent, not just with me, but with the changes going on. And so this really centered around change. And so what I needed to do was to kind of figure out three things, going back to awareness, acceptance, adapting, and adhering. I had to learn quickly, what did I need to do emergently to get our culture back on track? What did I need to do urgently, and what did I need to do long term? And so what I also did is I rebranded us again. Even though we were Emory, if you look at our pens, we're Emory Proud, Grady Made, and blasted out throughout the program. We kept our retreat, as you guys did as well, and really tried to urgently and emergently organize different meetings. And so by this, I had new chiefs that were implemented. They came together with our old chiefs. We had many, many town halls in which I was there, and actually quite a few where I was not. And one of the things that helped is I brought our service lines together. And so trauma came over. They spoke to our residents. We came in as a unified force. And my female faculty, because it was really interesting, it was actually more female upon female type of aggressions and microaggressions. And so my female staff also came in, and we had some really open conversations that emergently needed to be done to create an open and just culture. And so those town halls also became very important. So that was the urgent strategy. And what I learned is I really needed to involve the residents, to listen to them, and then to have them on board with our mission and vision and values of the program. Kind of urgently, really we did more team building, kind of different retreats with different classes and getting them together and really having kind of these discussions where they were outside of the residency program and then bringing those back. One of the other things that was very helpful in bringing us together was opening up an anonymous email, and this was truly anonymous to this day. Actually, on my most recent ACGME, they're like, no, it's not anonymous, but it really is. So for my residents in the room, it is anonymous. But it was really helpful because I could get an idea of maybe what was going on, and then I send personal emails to each one of them just checking in about biannually throughout the year. And then lastly, just to continue the thing that I learned in order to kind of keep that Emory Proud, Grady Made, which we truly live by at our facility, is I continue to share the vision of the program as well and where I want to take us. And so this involves, team building experiences and coming to SAEM and ASAP and becoming the Grady ladies, which there's one very unusual one there with a wig on. But we really, again, continue to be that Emory Proud, Grady Made. And so in that program director horror story of a lot of frowns, I feel that we're definitely on track and creating great strides. And we're still not there yet. Sometimes there's definitely still some frowns. But going back to the learner theory of making sure that you're listening to your residents, adapting where appropriate, and just keeping that conversation open with them as well with what can you change and realistically what can you not, because there are some things that you just cannot. So in summary, really, this is not always a sprint. Now, there are some things like when there was something posted on Student Doctor Network that needed to be discussed urgently and emergently, but really a lot of this is a marathon. And so understanding when you're going to create change, that we always want something done so quickly, it doesn't feel good, we want it to change. But a lot of times it takes years, and it takes classes to graduate for that change to really be felt. To make sure that your priorities and values are clear, and again, making sure that they understand your mission and vision and values of your program, and to also identify your allies, not just within your department, but outside of your department as well. The resident ownership and transparency, if they have a recommendation, well, let us know how you want to carry this through, and then how are you going to make sure that you're successful. And so you want to set clear goals, and how do you know when you're successful? And that your every decision is really deliberate. And so you really want to target that for the effect that you're looking for. So in this case, I really wanted to hear what the residents had to say, but I wanted to do it electronically because I knew that's how they were kind of interacting with each other. And so I really wanted that effect to be immediate and deliberate and targeted for effect, so I could stand in front of them and say, this is what I've heard, this is how we're going to address it. And that perception is truly real. And sometimes you have to ask your colleagues to hold you in check. So for me, it was maybe calling Dr. Moll or calling some of my other colleagues who are program directors to be like, does this sound right? Am I doing the right thing? And so definitely lean on your friends and your colleagues as well. And again, going back to implementing this, and not just to try it, but really be thoughtful in how you implement and roll these things out. And I really like the last point as well, is to bring these back to the residents. And so every year, biannually, celebrate those victories of, hey, look where we've come, look where we were, and look where we're going. And so I think that that's really important when you're leading, that you can get that, get the residents on board with you so that they'll follow you and continue to be proud in their program.